let's have a look. He said something today, which actually, we won't play a lot of this, but I think there's a good conversation to be had around this. And there might be some people saying, well, why are you playing that interview tomorrow night, Pat, after we play this conversation? So he has a bit of a chat about conspiracy theorists and how much time we should be giving to conspiracy theorists. Now, not wanting to give him too much grief, but the first thing I did notice with Mike's Minute takes about 3 minutes to get through. We're not going to play the whole thing, but we'll just play a little bit of it. And it's based around the Prime Minister in America and having a meeting with Blackfoot. I think it's called Blackfoot, the group that security group.
Oh, BlackRock.
BlackRock, sorry. Blackfoot is what you get when you've got leprosy. BlackRock, because and the conspiracy theorists going nuts over it. Let's just have a quick listen to a few of his words. There's something in the first 10 seconds he says, which I'll come back to, but the whole thing. Here we go. Anytime you're ready.
The Mike Hosking Breakfast, 6 to 9 weekdays on News Talk ZB.
G'day there. It's an interesting conundrum, don't you think? The Herald yesterday led for an extended period of the day with a story written by a blog site called The Spin-Off.
Okay, first of all, did you get that? A blog site called The Spin-Off. One wonders if someone protesteth a bit too much, referring to The Spin-Off as a blog site. But we'll go on.
About a story that had semi-taken off about Jacinda Ardern and her trip to America, but more specifically to a company called BlackRock. Now, I would not have mentioned it. In fact, I didn't, given I got the emails in the very early hours of the morning yesterday, in what was clearly yet another orchestrated attempt by the crazies to peddle the latest conspiracy theory. Now, the conspiracy theory is, well, I think it is, I'm not entirely sure because it's a waste of time going down the whole rabbit hole, but the conspiracy theory, in the broadest of senses, is there is a sort of a one world type project and we're all being manipulated. More specifically, BlackRock, which is a heavyweight investment company, is thought by the crazies to own mainstream media and all of pharmaceutical companies all over the world and a part of the overarching conspiracy about this new world order. Anyway, Prime Minister went to meet them. The trouble with the PM going to meet them is if you follow any sort of news, you knew she went to meet them because it was widely covered at the time. The emails, though, suggest it's a conspiracy and nobody knew about it.
So that'll do. That gives us a gist of it. He goes on to talk a little bit about Clark Gayford and his ankle bracelet as well being a conspiracy. Thank you, VJ Rex, for the $10. Appreciate that. And appreciate the super chat. Unfortunately, government can't be trusted to negotiate actual cheaper deals, often devolves to preferential providers who write everything. Yeah, very good. Thank you, VJ. Appreciate that. So conversation about conspiracy theories and how much attention we should give them.
So
have
first
at it, boys.
of all, I didn't like that wee segment because I agreed with Mike Hosking.
I know.
It feels yucky.
I get it.
Oh, yuck. Look, this is something that I've wrestled with a lot, you know, when you're talking about these conspiracy groups and really edge politics, extremism and that sort of thing. Do you ignore it or do you shine a light on it? You know, I think we touched on this a little bit when we were talking last night about your interview that's coming up on Friday. You know, do you make the risk of platforming someone, or do you just hold up a mirror and sort of go, well, you know, really? You do sound like crazy. Like someone I was thinking about last night was obviously Louis Theroux and his very famous interviews with some very deviant people.
The most hated
Nazis
church in America. Yeah.
And you would never say that he was platforming Nazis. You know, it's a very, very different thing. And I think it's the targeted questions and that sort of thing. And I think this is what the spin-off has done here. They're shining a light into a corner that people would quite happily not need to know about. But we saw where that got us with the Parliament occupation, I guess.
Yep.
And how things have spun out of control during COVID. And I think it's just too many people spending too much time on the internet. But it's very easy to write these groups off and ignore what they're doing. And then it goes, oh, shit, I didn't know this was going on. We kind of need to know that it's going on.
I wonder if it's a mix between needing to know what's going on and when you shine enough light on something, do you begin to sort of idolize or celebrate it? Even if you don't agree with it, does it become almost fetishize it? And there are certainly some people out there in the media and some sites and some blogs who will always go after the massive controversial issue because it's the massive controversial issue, and that's the only reason. And so, like the conversation I'm having tomorrow night with James Hake from America, and people who know me will adhere to this, and they will concur with it. And it's actually been my career, is I genuinely like to know why people believe what they believe. It is really genuinely part of my DNA almost when it comes to this, having meaningful conversations, understanding why people believe what they believe, and also leading people to water. Now, I think if I didn't feel comfortable, like for example, I think we talked about this, George, did we talk about this? Or maybe we weren't doing it. Sorry. So maybe it's just me thinking about the podcast. I didn't want to get, what's his name? TK on, is it Billy TK, yeah. Whatever his name is. He would have been a great podcast conversation, but I didn't feel like I could lead a horse to water. So part of the element of my kind of yardstick was gone. And I didn't feel, perhaps, for want of a better word, platforming him would have led anyone else to water watching it. With this one for tomorrow night, James Hake, I actually really do wonder if you get to watch it tomorrow night, I would encourage it, or else watch it on demand because it'll be on the site after that. I do wonder if he'll, I mean, he probably won't. I'm probably being naive, but I wonder if he'll stop and pause and think about some of the things that we talked about.
His whole scam relies on, upping the ante constantly, because his whole sort of genre revolves around owning the libs and being as outrageous.
So that's something else, though, George, not to cut you off, but to add to what you're saying, is then there's grifters. And that's another whole category as well, who typically are described as people who really don't believe what they believe, but they're doing it and saying it to get an audience, to monetize and get money. So there's that element as well.
There's a lot of grifters out there.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's totally the case with this dude. Well,
you reckon it is?
I don't think he actually is serious about having some sort of intellectual conversation about how white people should be the majority in America.
No, because then you can paint yourself as the victim when there's inevitable, clap back against you, and I'm being victimized. Please contribute to my Patreon to keep me speaking the truth.
Exactly.
When you look at all of these guys, they run the same from the local ones here, like Lee Williams, to over in the UK, right through the anti-trans movement and the anti-immigrant movement. And it's the same over in the States, where they're like, oh, we're the silent majority and we're being deplatformed. Watch me on YouTube, on Twitch, on Telegram, and here's me in the latest article of fucking shit heap weekly. It's they're all running a scam because they're, it's their moneymaker.
Yeah, I want to highlight.
You go. Sorry, go.
I want to highlight this Politikiwi comment because this does come up a lot. Is the fact checking, trying to meet people on some sort of plane of like facts and logic or whatever, or
the marketplace of ideas.
Exactly, it's a trap that I think we fall into quite a bit, trying to meet them on their plane of reality when really they're there to basically, again, try to be as full on as possible.
Having a debate me coward. Sometimes you end up with the point of going, well, some opinions and some beliefs just do not operate on the same plane. You can't say that these people belong in a death camp and no, I disagree, deserves the same amount of airtime.
Exactly.
We already debated that. It was World War II. It was a bad time. We all agreed. We don't need to revisit it,
And at the same time, I don't have a problem with Pat interviewing the guy, because it means our community can kind of we can talk about this like we're talking about now, and our community can watch it and have a laugh and that sort of thing. I don't think it's necessarily like platforming bad ideas, because I don't believe that ideas are these sort of viral things that will suddenly appear in the minds of whoever watches that video, and suddenly they'll be racist themselves.
Yeah.
No, and look, it was quite interesting. And look, I just want to say again, thanks to Kim for the super chat. Kim's shouting us
thanks,
coffee.
Kim.
Thanks, Kim. We appreciate that. And also, you're talking about what you said last night, Chewy, about would you get angry with this? And I said, well, maybe. This is my mate Jason, who is part of the reason we're doing this, because he is the technical guy who helped me set all this stuff up when we were working together on every podcast I did prior to lockdown. And then since lockdown onwards, I've basically been a solo thing. But, you know, once every couple of weeks, Jason gets a phone call, go, it's not fucking working. And he does what he can to settle me down and help me out. But this comment here, oh God, I'm having flashbacks to episode 3 and Dion. That was a podcast we did with a flat earther. You know how I said I enjoy speaking to flat earthers. I love that one. But I hear it, and I really would encourage you to come tomorrow night and have a listen and have a watch. It's too long. It literally goes into Saturday. But have a look and have a listen. It's just an interesting insight into the minds of some people. I don't think he's a grifter, as in I don't think he doesn't believe what he's saying, because he's involved with this guy Jesse Lee Peterson, and Jesse Lee Peterson spouts all these things as well. And it sounds like you're listening to someone who's sat in a church building, group. He's heard it from the front and he's just repeating it. And I actually think, with the greatest respect to James, if he ever sees this, he sounds really unconfident in his language. He almost comes across as a little bit nervous about the conversation, because as soon as you ask a question, like he was talking about how same-sex marriage is bad, and I'm like, okay, so you told me it's bad, now tell me how it's bad. And he couldn't really do it. He came up with that bullshit argument about procreation and children, and I went, oh, okay, so 2 7-year-olds getting married is bad then, because they're not going to have kids. So it was like he hadn't, like, fuck, I've been doing this for 20 years, yeah? And especially when I worked in a talkback station, which was primarily conservative, I've heard every argument, I've had every argument, I've researched every argument without saying, yay me, I'm the shit. You need to bring your A game. You really, really need to bring your A game. And actually a couple of times in that conversation, I said to him, nah, bro, you're better than this. That's a terrible argument. I actually said it to him in the conversation. I said, no, that's not good enough. That's not good enough.
I mean, is that a sign of someone that's just trapped so hard in his echo chamber that he just doesn't get people pushing back against them?
Probably.
They just go, yeah, man, that's it.
Probably.
You don't have to defend your argument, so you don't have a defense ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah, it could well be that. And look, I guess we've done a very good advert for tomorrow night's show, haven't we, guys? Sure, everyone will be tuning in now. But look, I think it was fair to ask the question, should we platform him? I kind of hate that term, actually, to be honest. But because of what was said today by Mike Hosking about, talking to conspiracy theorists, and there's no question. And I did a podcast today with Jason Kerrison from OpShop, who was also quite a high profile figure at the Wellington protests. And dude, I had a lovely time talking to Jason Kerrison. I was working in music radio in the late 1990s, so OpShop was a pretty big band of part of my life, with certainly One Day and Maybe and those sorts of things as well. And, I don't actually want to say what we said in the conversation, because I want people to tune in maybe next Tuesday when we drop it. But he told me some stuff that's happened to him through his positions that have kind of ended parts of his career. And we had a really interesting conversation. And I still say, and George, I think you can probably testify to this, I don't think I've ever been mean or nasty or abused, for example, an anti-vaxxer. I might have said I think their views are ridiculous, but I don't think I've ever attacked any one of them. And I'm going to platform Jason Kerrison, A, because he's a really impressive figure in our country for the last 20 years with his music, and B, because he's got some interesting thoughts. And I say interesting not as in I think that they're valid or good or persuasive, but some interesting things to talk about. Like I fact checked him in real time on one thing when he talked about people having to keep their jobs by getting a vaccine. I said, well, that one's easy, because like if you're a nurse, there's a list of vaccines you have to be a nurse. This is just one more. So there's actually already tons of jobs where you need vaccines for. And he admitted to, oh well, maybe I didn't know that one. He sent a tweet out aimed at Hillary Barry that she took as a veiled death threat. Now we can argue whether that was fair or not. He's backed off that. He basically apologized on the podcast for it and acknowledges his wrong. So, I'm platforming a conspiracy theorist on some level, but I'm also talking to an amazing musician with an interesting life who's got some perspective on his actions but still he's got lots of positions that we disagree on. I think it's an interesting chat.
I think with the Mike Hosking thing, my thoughts on it were a bit different to what we've been talking about. It. I'm sort of interested in how increasingly the term conspiracy theorist is used for, people I don't disagree with, or maybe people with radical ideas, and it will increasingly be used against, those on the left that don't think, for example, that Bill Gates is putting chips in our vaccines, but maybe are critical of the United Nations, or critical of the fact that, yes, a bunch of bank investors do run the world, or, critical of these things, and then are sort of dismissed as conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
It's interesting how quick it's changed, hasn't it? Like, I mean, in the circles that I moved in, you'd hit a lot of those notes, the banks control everything and big government is bad and all of that sort of stuff. And I wonder what it is like, take COVID as an example. Like, everything that I read, all the people that I listened to, it all had a ring of truth, for me at least. And then for other people, it's just struck them as propaganda, and I'm not going to follow that, and something seems off, and then that might have knocked them into the orbit of someone that's even more down that track, and it just spirals from there. But it just seems to me that there's a lot more people talking about a lot more crazy stuff just lately. I'd say in the last couple of years.
Yeah, but I would probably push back on that. Not that I know, but I'd say, is that the truth, or is it just that we have far more access to getting our message out there with social media, and in the 1980s, you could write a letter, or you could pick up a phone, or you could send a letter to the editor. Now you can send a message that gets seen by 100,000 people from your bedroom. So
yeah, I mean, even talking about, say, talkback radio.
Yep.
You work the late night shift. You knew there were crazies calling in and that sort of thing. And then I'm sure you had a big red button where you just went, too crazy, goodbye, next caller. But with the internet, we don't have that big red button.
Yeah,
I think you'll often find a grain of truth with these people. It often reminds me that Donald Trump used to sort of espouse truths that had never been spoken about from the presidential podium out loud. Finally saying some, because at the end of the day, there are convoluted networks of power and conspiracy that do run the world, right? The invasion of Iraq was a conspiracy, for example. And again, just on a
Fair
more
point.
sort of perverse sort of angle, I am kind of into the whole JFK thing as well, because I mean, that's power in politics. It's a conspiracy of like-minded people in power getting together to do bad shit. And
what we should do one night is we should just get a big list of conspiracies and go down and rank them. From most believable to most unbelievable.
Oh, I like that. Maybe you should start working on that, Chewy. I'm liking that one.
Because
I like conspiracy theories, and I actually really enjoy doing the flat earther one and talking to flat earthers. But the reason I can understand also the danger of any conspiracy theory, not to hark on about the gateway drug, because I don't think that's particularly sound science anymore, but when I was spending time speaking to flat earthers right before the Christchurch massacre, it was in those flat earth chat rooms that I saw the most vicious comments about the Christchurch massacre being a
false flag
event. So
everything's a false flag.
You love the moon landing. That's an interesting one to talk about, or JFK, and that gets you into 9/11. You become a flat earther, then all of a sudden 51 murdered civilians in the country as a government turning on its people. And that's where I was like, oh, okay, I can
big
see. Yeah. But no, we should look. We're already getting yes. Paul says yes, please. The Illuminati sprays chemtrails over the flat Earth. There you go. There's one to start with.
That's one thing. Do you know birds aren't real?
Birds? I know
Birds
space is
aren't
not real.
No, birds aren't real. They're a government surveillance thing. And, I think there's a public holiday where they... lockdown was because they needed to change all the batteries.
So what is it, like a 50-year battery there? We're not going to have another lockdown for another 50 years?
Yeah, good point. There's some really fun ones that are clearly meant for laughs, but
That's why the bird one was created, right? To take the piss out of.
yeah, take the absolute piss. I remember seeing a thing of like, you talk about the moon landings, that the best way to respond to that is like, bro, do you believe that? Do you believe the moon's real?
Yeah.
Mate, you're a sucker.
I always struggle with conspiracy theories because I try and work them out. So I think 9/11 was a really interesting one, and the issues around the plane that hit the Pentagon is really fascinating because of all the millions of cameras that didn't catch anything. But so what I did was I delved into it, and I got someone. Is it Loose Change? Is it the documentary that talks about?
Yes. Yeah.
I got someone from Loose Change on, and I got an engineer who was at the Twin Towers the day after they fell, doing the investigation and writing the reports. I got those two people talking on the radio, and everything that the Loose Change guy said, like, it fell into its own footprint. And even actually, no, it didn't. I was there, and there was buildings, 1,000 meters away that were hit by debris of an angled falling building, and it just went over and over and just off, and it's just like, all right, let's. He knows what he's talking about. So yeah, no, but I'm down for that.
I noticed that Paul in the comments has solved my bird battery issue. They actually charge on the power lines.
That is brilliant.
There we go. See, it's self-sustaining now.
So why that means there's that idea of cars being able to charge as they drive along the road with charging wires underneath. So the birds must be like the forerunner for that.
Yeah, that's how they rolled out initial testing.
That's brilliant. I'm loving that.
I'm going to come up with a list.
Yeah, we'll look at real ones as well.
Yeah. Do you know what I think the biggest conspiracy theory is?
I'm saying birds aren't real or aren't real.
The biggest conspiracy theory is, I think George is fairly Orwellian, because at the start of this, before we came on air, I went, we'll do that one about conspiracy theories in 5-10 minutes, won't we? George laughed, and it's been 25 minutes. No, I was like 25 minutes. We've been talking about it.
It was never going to be a short piece.
While you're watching, though, just to remind you, tomorrow night we have got this conversation with this guy here. Let me show you. He's going to be on. We're going to start it at 10 o'clock. It's already been recorded, so we won't be here live to do it. But you'll be able to talk to each other in the chats. Maybe I'll drop into the chats and have a look, and so I can put some of your comments over it if you want to see it. But you can see it by the flag he's wearing on his chest and all that kind of stuff.
It's really hard to tell what he's about.
Well, when he admitted to me that the last time he'd used the N-word was yesterday, that also put a different perspective on who he is as a person. But he only said
it was because he was at a Kanye concert, eh?
No, not pulled on stage.
It wasn't.
We wouldn't seen that clip.